My next guest is a screenwriter, playwright, syndicated columnist, and a New York Times bestselling author. Tuesdays with Morrie spent 4 straight years atop that prestigious list, and his latest novel, The Little Liar, is set during the Holocaust, and it explores love and redemption in the midst of that very dark reality. Please welcome back to the show, Mitch Albom. Thank you so much for being here and for taking the time. This latest novel, as I mentioned, it's set during the Holocaust, and it focuses, Mitch, on the lives of these 3 children in Greece, who are all victims of deceptions and the deceptions of war. And it deals with the nature of truth and the grace of redemption. Now, I know the idea for this first came to you when you were in a museum. Tell us which one and how the idea came.
I was in Israel for a book tour on an older book. And I was with Yad Vashem, which is the famous Holocaust museum there. And on the walls are different videos of people who were survivors who were recorded talking about that period of time. And I happened to stop in front of one where a woman was talking about how people have asked her over the years, why did you get on those trains if you know those trains were taking you to concentration camps and your deaths? And she said, we didn't know. We were fooled because the Nazis would often use Jewish people under the threat of death to trick them and stand on the tracks and say, it's safe, you can get on the trains. And I thought this was just a particularly cruel ruse to, use your own people against you. And so the idea always sat in my brain that there was a book there somehow. And then when I decided to make it about a little boy, that's when it kind of came together in The Little Liar.
Yeah, and Little Liar, it does involve a little Greek boy, Nico, who has a reputation as a truth teller, and he's tricked by the Germans, a German officer, to deceive his neighbors. Tell us a little bit about what kind of journey Nico then sets on, and what were you after here? What did you want readers to confront, Mitch?
I wanted people to ask themselves, what's the biggest lie they've ever told? What were the consequences of that lie? And what would you do to be forgiven for that lie? And in Nico's case, as you point out, he's 11 years old, has never told a lie. He gets tricked by the Nazis when they invade his town in Greece to stand on the platform and tell people it's okay, the trains are going to be safe, they're taking you to new jobs and new homes. And only on the very last day, when he sees his own family and this little girl that he loves being pushed into a boxcar, does he realize that he has been tricked and that these trains are actually going to the concentration camps, and he's not allowed to go. And so the book follows him and his brother and the little girl that they both like and this Nazi who tricked him for the next 40 years, showing the ramifications of that one lie, Raymond, that one lie on all of their lives, and shows you the power of a lie when it is that evil and the need for forgiveness of something like that, the magnitude that we require when we want to be forgiven.
Yeah, no, it's a life-affirming and really moving story. Look, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but The Little Liar is a meditation on truth, ultimately. And what happens when Nico learns the truth really sets him in the opposite direction. He becomes a pathological liar, Mitch. I mean, and it really ends up being a powerful fable, I think, for all of us. Do you think truth is a casualty in today's culture? And at what price?
100%, Raymond. It is. And I think we live in a world where we're all choosing our own truths. There's even this expression, my truth. People say that all the time as if they're proud of it. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If your truth doesn't match my truth, then what is the truth? And I think when you live in a society where someone can put a falsehood up on a little device, a little phone or something, and in 15 seconds, the whole world has read it, before it exemplifies that old expression, the lie travels around the world before the truth can put its pants on. And we really live in a world like that today.
I'll say. And look, I was stunned to learn, Mitch, that 20% of young Americans believe the Holocaust is a myth. How is that even possible? And then there was another, 33% who said it might be a myth. I mean, this is like mind-blowing.
It is. It's shocking. And I grew up, Raymond, in a neighborhood with a lot of older Jewish people that lived in it, and many of them would wear long sleeves, in the summertime. And I remember as a little boy asking my mother, why are they wearing it? It's so hot outside. They have these long sleeves. And she'd say, well, they have these numbers tattooed on their forearms and they don't want people to see. And I said, well, why not? And she said, well, I'll tell you when you're older, And of course, I found out when I was older, well, many of those people are no longer around. to tell the story of what happened. And I read that same report that you did about 20% of young Americans thinking that the Holocaust is a myth. And interestingly, that same study, anyone over 65, it was 0% think that it's a myth.
Right.
So that shows you that the people who know people and remember that period of time can tell you, no, it's not a myth. And yet you have young people somehow coming up and saying, we don't want to hear that. We know better. That's one of the reasons I wrote The Little Liar, was because I wanted in my literary career before I died to contribute at least one book that would push forth again the idea that this can never happen again. And it was very, very real. And everything in The Little Liar, except the 4 fictional characters, is actually true and true events and based on true events, to try to bring home the point about how horrific that period of time was.
Yeah. Mitch, how long did it take you to assemble the book? I mean, a book like this, I know it was big. I know how, at times you grab things here and there as you go. But how long did it take you from the inspiration at Yad Vashem till now?
Well, I like to say, books take me about 1.5 years to write and a lifetime to think up. So, it's somewhere in between that. I mean, it was 10 years ago that I saw that museum. So I've been noodling with the idea for 10 years. But when I finally came up with the idea of truth being the narrator of the book, that's when I sat down and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I wrote this one page that said, it just kind of came to me one morning, and I said, you can trust the story you're about to hear. You can trust it because I'm the only thing in the world you can trust. I'm the mirror that holds your final reflection. I am truth. And this is the story of a little boy who tried to break me. And when I read that back, I said, yeah, I'd like to read this book. And I said, okay, I'm going to start.
I know that story. Yeah. Isn't it amazing? Yeah, people always ask, when did you get the idea? But sometimes those ideas take a lot of time to germinate, and then they kind of mature at the right time. It's really like planting a garden in your head. I mean, it's a little seed, and then who knows when it blooms or what triggers it. But then you have to kind of go where it leads. You pursue the truth. I mean, what you do in this book. And you touch on something. When you were last here, we talked about the effect of social media and how that was contributing to sort of a breakdown of faith and belief, and how it's almost become its own religion, social media. A recent Pew survey on so-called religious nuns, those with no religious affiliation, not the ones in habits, but people of no religious affiliation, is on the rise. Religion was always kind of the social glue that held this American experiment together. As that begins to slip away, Mitch, what effect does that have on the concept of truth and objective truth, as opposed to what you were saying earlier, my truth?
Yeah, it erodes it and it starts to wipe it out, because if you don't feel like there are some things that are universally true, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt respect, your neighbors and love your mother and your father. Basic things that are considered, what is religion if not as an acceptance of certain things that are true? And if you let that go, you say, well, there's no such thing as true. It's just whatever I want at the time. That's my truth. Then you've broken down the very concept of truth and the very value of it. There's a parable that I use in the book, which is an actual parable. I didn't make it up, but I heard it about when God decided to create the world. Before he decided to create man, he got all the angels together and asked them if it was a good idea. And all of them said yes. The angel of righteousness said, yes, let man be created, he will be righteous. Angel of mercy said, yes, let man be created, for he will do merciful acts. Only the angel of truth said, no, do not let man be created, for eventually he will tell lies and be false. And the parable says that God took the angel of truth and cast him out of heaven and threw him down to earth. And there are many interpretations of why God did that, but in my view, it was so that truth would smash into 1 billion pieces, and every little piece would land inside the human heart, and there it would either live or die. And it's up to us in our faith and in our lives to decide, are we going to honor the truth, or are we going to just let it die? And sadly, we're moving more in the latter direction than the former.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Finally, Mitch, what do you want readers to take away from Nico's journey and this little liar who sort of finds his way through the telling of lies? And well, I like I said, I don't. It's such a beautiful book. Everybody should go and read it. But what do you want them to confront and wrestle with and be left with at the end?
Well, I can't write a book without hope, Raymond, and I've been teased about that. A critic once ripped me apart in a whole review, and at the end he said, he's just the king of hope," as if it was a bad thing. I thought, well, it's actually not too bad. I'll take that.
So that's an
But
honor.
there is, yeah, I think so. But the book is a hopeful book, and it deals with forgiveness, which goes back to my time with Tuesdays with Maury. I always say all my books contain a little slice of Tuesdays with Maury in them. And my visits with Maury, a lot of it, he talked about forgiving people before you die. And Nico seeks forgiveness his whole life. And Fanny, the little girl who was in love with him, tries to find him her whole life to forgive him. Of course, he's changed his name, he's changed his identity, he doesn't live anywhere near where, so it takes them a lifetime to find each other again. But it's all about ultimately the idea that yes, you could do something that's wrong, but if you earnestly seek forgiveness and others earnestly seek to forgive you, in the end there can be a hopeful ending. And that's what I'd like people to take away when they read The Little Liar.
No, Mitch, I have to agree with that critic. You really are the king of hope. I mean, all these stories are hopeful and redemptive, and to me, that's what makes them so appealing. And I think so. Well, they cut to your heart, and they're rare. It's a handful of authors who are doing any of that today, which I think are wrestling with the eternal things we all as human beings deal with, and not only what we deal with here, but what we will be dealing with in the next life. So to touch on that is, I know, a brave walk, and one you've done repeatedly, so beautifully over all these years. So The Little Liar really is, I think, another beautiful, hope-filled book that confronts the truth of where we are as well. The Little Liar, a new novel by Mitch Albom, is available at bookstores everywhere online. You can follow him on X at Mitch Albom. And Mitch, always a pleasure having you. I hope you'll come back.
I sure will, Raymond. Thanks so much.